nice to know us bringing Katie out was a benefit for you. Yeah, that works. That's even better.
Kate, or no, her boss.
Hi, how are you?
All you Mexican cats.
This is Kyle, our pastor, who is a singer-songwriter, acoustic guy. Went to Fuller for a little while, then he went to Vanderbilt. Studied with Amy Jo Lee, Princeton guy, pianist.
Another one.
So we got all these musicians who actually stood out because of radio juice.
Good to meet you.
He's been doing tours in Presbyterian.
Just one song. Just under Kyle Pratt and called Devil's Garden.
Kids
Working
out.
on stuff. I'm working on stuff. Yeah, my kids spoke all my balance. Well, almost two.
Do you need to say any welcoming words to Dan today? Music. You call yourself a music director?
I never keep you from talking.
You can both say welcome if you want.
No, go ahead.
So you'll greet everybody, take a minute, then I'll greet everybody and welcome people on behalf of the store.
Looking forward to hearing that.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. We've got refreshments back there.
No, I never read it once, but I looked about the past. All the other past. It's been a nice change of pace. Promise I'll stop after 2 days.
Sorry I missed your word about veggie sandwiches. I could have easily.
Well, she wanted to switch to a patient custody. My home patient was straight away. They were doing, yeah. And we had Andy address. We had the mail kind of came through. We had a couple of yeah, I mean, you don't know me. Really? I need the animal to reach the post.
Richard's serious.
talk to Dan or our pastor, Kyle Goff, who's sitting right here waiting. Kyle. Thank you. He made me wave on Sunday and said, "No, there's a bookseller here," because he was talking about Richard Foster book. He said, "Why are you that book on it?" So I was like, "I'd like to do that." So, yeah, Hearts and Minds is sponsoring this thing. As I look around, I think almost all of you know this, but I'll just say it for the record. And if anybody's at home listening, thank you for watching and tuning in here. I know there's a couple people tuning in. Hearts and Minds is in Downtown, Pennsylvania, about 10 miles down the road. We've been there about 42 years as an independent bookstore. Mail order presents, big online thing. We sell books all over the world. Send stuff out of a full-time mail order thing. So I do a notes newsletter. It's a newsletter that goes out every week, reviewing titles and just talking about books I'm excited about, new things we get in, or a theme if we're interested in a topic, racism or prayer, what have you. So I would invite you to sign up for our Hearts and Minds newsletter and stay abreast of things. Back in the day, before COVID, we brought in more speakers to our store. And sometimes if the event is going to be too big, well, the biggest thing we did was Beverly Lewis, a novelist. And the second biggest thing we did was N.T. Wright. We had more for Beverly Lewis than we did for N.T. Wright, who was in our backyard, because we didn't want to let that go. We wanted to do it at Hearts and Minds. But often when we bring people, we would partner with local churches. So we've done events here at First Pres before. This is a church back on that part. And we partnered with some other local churches as well, like speakers with the word and so forth. So this is sort of a standing in line of a long string of 40 years of bringing in authors to celebrate the printed page, to affirm authors and the gifts that they bring to us when we write books. That wouldn't have a job to do if it weren't for authors writing books. So this is Bill Carter, who we'll introduce in just a second. Bill is a Presbyterian pastor in Clark's Summit, PA, which is up in the northeast corner of the Poconos. And he's a Princeton alum, Princeton grad, and has been a stalwart in the Presbyterian Church of Evergreen for years. I always are known in part because he's written some books on preaching. He's written a book on Lent, which we'll carry next Lent season. Even edited that book on stewardship, on fundraising for churches. So he's an author in the Presbyterian circles. But I think you probably are known because he's also in this band that some of you know. And if you've been in Hearts and Minds, we were probably playing it. Some of the songs we have memorized because we played at the store sometimes. And that is a band that he calls Presby Pop. Kind of corny if you ask me, but Pop is actually a kind of jazz. And so it ends up being like a pretty sophisticated name. He's got a couple of CDs back there. He's written this book called Driving on a Rim. And as you know, it's about jazz and it's right. So without further ado, thank you for supporting Hearts and Minds. Thank you, Bill, for driving down here to tell us about the book and maybe play some songs. We're going to turn it over to him, and thank you for the printed page and for writing this great book.
Synod School events in 1998. I looked it up. Yeah, we're just getting started. I'm pretty sure all the time. Wait,
Yeah, the printed page and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, printed page.
We'll get to that.
Ain't by
written music is a contradiction in terms. You cannot write music. You can only approximate what it sounds like and translate it into dots and stems and lines and rhythms and meters. And even then, it doesn't make any noise until the noise maker shows up. So why write a book about music? Probably because when music finds us, there's a spark, or a flash of lightning, or the sound of thunder, or the building of a community, or something is awakened, or empowered, or enlivened. It can't be seen because it's invisible. Why write a book about music? Is this just a steady exercise? Something that philosophers of the 19th century said affects the heart, and not really the brain? Or is there something that you hear in a two-part dimension by Bach that is elaborate enough that it pulls you in? And you hear the logic even though you do not know what the logic is. There's something there that fits and unfolds, and you realize there are aspects to this. It starts, something happens, and it finishes. Unless it's jazz, and it starts, and it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. And even when it's done, it might not be finished. Because music, like so many other sonic experiences, affects us when it hits the eardrum. Why did I write this book? Because my whole life has been dogged by that sonic transformation that has come through saxophonists and drummers and singers. Because I have seen music come out of acoustic basses. And because I've heard stories of others who have been similarly affected, infected, or disinfected by music. Here's one quick story, which my wife has heard 1,000 times. On March 31st, 1955, Thursday night, the Latonia Theater in Oil City, Pennsylvania, my parents' hometown, Louis Armstrong and his All-Stars were performing. My mother was sitting in the front row balcony, row T. The ticket cost $1.85, which was a lot of money on March 31st, 1955. It was a Thursday night, and Armstrong's Bible said he had played the night before in State College. He was probably on his way to Cleveland. And if you draw a diagonal, okay, Oil City's a long way. What else you can do on Thursday night? And conversely, what else is there to do in Oil City, Pennsylvania on Thursday? So her aunt took her, this was 2 days after my mother's birthday, her 19th birthday. They knew about Armstrong. They had heard him on something called the radio, and they had listened to him on something called a record, none of which really kind of exists like they did in 1955. And you could see the musician live, and so they went. Happy birthday, Betsy. Betsy and me, front row. The audience is wrapped. Every seat is filled on a Thursday night. And these days, if they're going for $1.85, I can understand why that was a lot of money back then. And Mom said something happened that I cannot describe. She said 2 things. One was, on the piano there was a stack of folded handkerchiefs. Not at this time, but you'll ones that are cloth. And within a minute or so of creating that music and putting it into the air, Pops, that was his name, would take this and wipe it and then toss it on the floor. Cause but there are a lot of them, and they have affected the culture. And everything is rather upright, and dare I say it, really quiet. At least it was 1955, which means, if you know your history, that Louis Armstrong and his interracial band in 1955 had to stay somewhere else that night. My cousins, who still live out that way, tell me it is not a sundown community, but at that point, there were places where it would be okay to entertain on stage, but we're not allowed to sleep in the precincts after night. And as I began to chew this, I realized that when we talk about jazz, we are talking about music that comes out of the conflicted racial history of America. I just picked up a news book that deals with not only the racial history, but the criminal history of America. That as jazz was forming, so was organized crime. And if you have a speakeasy, what kind of entertainment are you going to bring? And why not make it something that just kind of feels a little, joyful, but illicit? Kind of adds to the whole mythology of the city floor and the cigarette burns and the tables and all that. None of which is real, at least anymore. But jazz rose out of that seedbed as well. So that when we start digging into the history of the music, we find some stories that are just downright horrific. Like the story of Billie Holiday, who died handcuffed in her hospital bed under the orders of the man who was overseeing narcotics enforcement in America, and who had done everything in his power, legitimately and illegitimately, to get her to stop singing a song about lynching. Strange Fruit. Time magazine voted that at 1999 as the song of the century. And Byron and Steve made sure there's no Strange Fruit on the table tonight, because that's just a little, But that story of a woman who was violated in a number of ways, In your hymnal, David Van Merle has written a new text to it. It's hymn 481. And this is called Geneva 42. Geneva 42. What's that? Geneva Psalter, hymn 42, or Psalm 42. And it was probably composed by Louis Law. I'll tell you that in a minute. So even if the promoter says it should, or the spouse says, how long does this go on? And so throughout the book, I've started with some three-verse poems, and here's the last one, and then Byron and I can chat. This is titled, Are You Going to Talk About Heaven? The thin, grizzled drummer removes cymbals from their stands. A curious soul, he asks, so you are writing a book? What is it about? I pause to consider how to condense all these pages into 30 seconds of attention. Abundant life does not fit neatly in an instrument case. Setting in the mind for Monta, he asks fervently, are you going to talk about heaven? What do we say of heaven? God. Is it the period of the paragraph? The DNA on the tomb? Or is it a comma with an eternity? Is heaven flooded with colorblind justice? Is everyone healed? Will hungry musicians eat after the gig? Here's what I know. Heaven is a jazz solo sweeping all in its wake. Every foot taps, every head nods, every soul leans forward, and nobody wants it to end. Eyes listening, ears the music.
Well, Bill, we're just getting started.
Yeah, we are.
There are a number of people who I'm sure have questions and comments, and we're going to leave some time for that. But just to get us rolling, I thought I would ask some questions, and I even have more now after having heard this. So I don't know where we're going to start, but let's see.
Nobody need to know it, but the two of us get together. You wear a wristwatch? You wear a wristwatch?
No.
Yeah, I mean, we need to go out. So,
I sometimes say that like in Sunday school, you can go on, I'll just stay and keep talking here. So I love that. No, I don't have a watch. But here's the thing. You say, I know it's kind of a funny quip, but I think there's something really deep here about spiritual things. When you say that you, years ago, said you were born to pray the piano. So just to get to know you a little bit, what do you mean by that? When did you get this vision of praying the piano? What's it mean?
that line balled up at Kennebrook Bible Camp, right down the road in Lebanon. During a retreat with my former spiritual director, Kent Roth, who started the Oasis Ministries. And we were invited to reflect on why are we on the planet. Why were we invited to, what are we here? And I thought, oh, I'm here to pray the piano. And then I backed into it, as I backed into those things, tried to unpack what that meant. It meant that I bring my whole being before God and into unity. And one way I found to do that is to make music, to create music. So that if it's spiritual, it's because the spirit that animates my spirit is here to animate everybody else.
Nice.
That's not prayer, I don't know what prayer
Yeah.
is.
Good, good.
It's a relationship.
You know, we do some creativity classes, childhood classes here at our church every so often for folks to nurture their God-given sense of creativity. And then out of that, I don't know why I'm really saying this, just because it's interesting off the subject, but out of that we did an adult ed class where we invited people who have hobbies or artistic gifts to do something. Tell us about it. Just what do you do to express your creativity? We had woodworkers, we had storytellers, we had fly fishermen, and some traditional painters and musicians, but we had some really unique, Kyle repairs guitars as a sort of a hobby. And so we tried to tap into this notion that everybody has some sort of creativity because we're made in the image of God. Is that theme important to you, that we're made in the image of God, and that's what sort of gives us?
It doesn't come from the ether. It comes from the divine love that created, and it is still creating all things. I mean, there was 8th day creation, and we're in it.
Okay.
I mean,
That's a Hebrew idea too, right? That's rooted in the scriptures. Eighth day of creation. Nice.
Which I can kind of imagine the baptismal font over at the sides, and that's probably why.
Wow.
You are a new creation in Christ.
Yeah.
I don't know where it comes from, but I use it.
That's good. That's good. You have a chapter in the book called Broken but Beautiful, because we are beautiful, made in God's image. We have dignity and creativity. But we are broken. Sinners, Calvinists call it. Broken and beautiful. And the subtitle of that chapter is, What Does It Mean to Be Human? Talk just a little about that.
That's the chapter of theological anthropology.
I like this.
That phrase, what does it mean to be a child of God? And it means, first of all, you come from someone. And it also means you probably have limits because you come from somebody. You're not the end in and of yourself. So that means you probably have a shelf life and an expiration date. And by the grace of Jesus, another animation after that. Whatever that is, the resurrection. But given that, and I'm following the theme of here now, that brings that, our Calvinist supporters talk about sin. But when you get underneath sin, which is not supposed to be kind of moral policing of what's right and what's wrong, like you don't date break dance or sugar date girls do. I mean, that's kind of the grand rapids view of dating. So, that's kind of this kind of thing where you always have to be careful because you step out of God's what has happened. And you realize if there's any zapping, there's a good chance you've done it to yourself. Maybe something did it to you. So, where did that come from? What's underneath it? And where it comes from is our incompleteness. And ever since we got moved out of the Garden of Eden, we've been trying to find that completeness in and of ourselves or the things we do, rather than learn how to live with it and say, at the end of the day, I'm having marriage, I think I'll take that. Or at the end of the day, I look back and there are things I didn't get to, but the things I shouldn't have done. God helps. Okay? So think about that, particularly in the Jedi certain minds. What has always interested me is how creative people can live in complete human wreckage and still do something beautiful. And the story I told is, I was a college dorm, and my teacher said, listen to Bill Evans. So I looked like a LP and put it on, and he playing the tune, When I Fall in Love, It Will Be Forever, Where I'm Going to Fall in Love. And I just brought it up with a woman. I was sure after 2 weeks of dating her, I got married because I was 19, I knew everything. So I'm kind of like learning how to be wrecked for the first time. And I hear this music with these chords.
They lack resolution. They dangle into the air. They come kind of like pearls from somewhere, and they resonated that way in me. And I thought, whoa, I've been found. And then as I've gotten to study the lives of musicians and befriend them, see that there isn't a single one who has it all together. I've never started agents who steal diabetic. He was succumbed to alcohol use in his late 20s. And the story goes that when he was dying in a boarding house in Queens, he would take his cornet and sat with his seat, playing notes all hours of the night. No one would hire him, he still would keep playing. And the landlord was pulled aside by his neighbors and said, you know, this is what he's doing. But please don't tell him we don't want him to stop. And I think, how beautiful. How beautiful.
So there's a brokenness and a beauty, sinners and saints that kind of hold together. Let me ask this then, and just shift a little bit. Talk about creativity, or talk about, let's do this. Talk about the creativity of writing, because you had to write this book, that's a discipline, versus music, which you told us is oral, and you're born to play the piano, but you write sermons too. So you're a writer and a musician, you're a composer and a performer. How does the creative process feel differently when you're writing a book versus when you're writing a sermon versus when you're writing a song?
You're writing a song and a performance.
Yeah.
When you're creating in one stage, you have to figure out what to do with the editorial voice. The editorial voice is that little demon that sits right here that says, you stink, why are you doing this? You're just wasting your time, we're wasting their time. You have to get a finger in the middle of this. And suspend the editor for a while. And just, first of all, get it out. So writing a book is a lot more exhaustive of a process. It involves charting out chapters, it involves research, it involves organization, it involves that terrible process that some have called killing your own names, meaning the stuff you thought was really good on paper, but it really doesn't fit. You gotta, and that's brutal. And it's solitary unless you really do unity around it. Sermon writing is kind of like that. You know, you give the congregation 18 minutes, 20 minutes, on the air conditioned day 25. And when it's over, I just think what some of the used words get swept out, aired out, and it's always next week. A book has some permanence to it. I'll admit to you, my brother, I do own a Kindle, but I don't use it very much. Because I like holding this in my hands. And there's something here I can refer to and underline and keep. And I've kept way too many of them.
Someone would you not? Talk a little bit about this. The song you just played that little bit of touched you because you were broken-hearted, and the jazz kind of minor keys or something, that irresolution affected you. How does lament, there's this biblical theme that we're increasingly learning about within the church these days, that it's okay, in fact, it's required by God to protest, to lament. How does jazz fit into the lament and protest movement?
Jazz has largely been created up until it became a university discipline with the Lincoln Center of Nuns. It has largely been created among marginal communities who find their voice to tell the truth, at least on what they see or what they encounter. And so it is a minority music in that sense. And jazz has always been running into trouble.
Because this is not original. You are using something for your profit. And there's kind of a sense of self-discipline within this that musicians hold one another accountable. And if you're not very good, they're not going to hire you. But they might send you off to the practice shed and say, see you in a couple of years. And so there's a mentoring that goes into this work. There's a community support. There's always a concern for education in the next generation. And I thought, what a great model for other forms of education, particularly in buildings like this.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's formation, it's not just.
But some of that, again, is from marginalized folks, and it has to do with brokenness, or sadness, or grief, or protest. Play something that's, can you play something that like might illustrate lament or blues, that brokenness that we hear in jazz? And then play, because the Geneva thing you played was almost like a jig or something. That was sort of like, ba, 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 ba. Play a song of lament, just a little bit.
And this is, I'm thinking very much of a friend named Heidi, whose husband called. I was in the hotel this afternoon, and Heidi is probably a terminal cancer case. I'll find out much more when I go home. And I wrote a piece of music for another friend who died of a hearing case called Interior Windows. So this is for anybody, and I mean anybody, who has lost someone here today. That's all, not lament, I don't know what it is.
jazz, since most of us are not players, although a few of you are, do you think listening to jazz, spending time with jazz musicians, learning the history of the tradition, reading the York can help us work on racial justice issues more. You mentioned that jazz comes out of the black community and somewhat. Some of you may know Warren Cooper, who sang here a couple of times. You know, he's played with him and sung with him the last time you played here with your whole band. Warren's a good friend. He's been here in York, and you know the history of our church's interracial stuff. Can jazz help us become better attentive to being anti-racist?
I think so, and certainly, you know, digging into the history and stories, because history is not even stories. That helps us understand some, but it helps us, the big way to understand is it uncovers what we want to smooth over. It uncovers what we want to avoid. It uncovers what is too painful to address. And one of the porous natures of jazz, it's music that largely has no words, that it invites us into contemplation. Kind of like sitting off the top of the mountain with arms folded, but to engage, you know, what is my life about? What is our life here about? What am I here for? What are we here for? And this is so important. And it is almost completely absent from a consumer society that's just bent on music, on everything to find, even if it means falling and our you know, yeah, it's like I live in eastern Pennsylvania, pretty soon we're going to be on beachfront property. Because people just are unwilling to look at their lives and use wastefulness.
So you're talking about jazz as an art form. But it's known, at least for some of us, it seems the stereotypical myth is, you know, it's smoky, dirty clubs on a Saturday night. And then you do this Presby bop thing. Here's what I want to ask you. Who's more open to the truths that you've been sharing with us? The unchurched jazz club at midnight on Saturday night, or the fine Presbyterians on Sunday morning? Or is that unfair?
I think it's probably fair. Neither really is open to it. Because they're swimming in, and again, not really thinking, not taking a day to something. I will say about the musicians in the band, and now the quartet has as many as 8 members in its concert. For the most part, they've been conditioned by the places and the occasions we perform, so that they're open to something beyond this is just a game. And I pay them as well as I can, so that, of course, gets them there. But I think church people continue, as I dare say, to live in the most segregated hour of the week. And it's segregated in all kinds of ways, not just racially, but I mean socially. We live in these little bubbles, and we still, so now we have lessons and dress codes, but you can kind of get a latte in the lobby and instead of your extra classes and listen to a band play music that nobody's singing to, and this is called contemporary worship. And I think, yeah, that's as clueless as anything else. I mean, are people really engaged in what's going on? And how do we make it accessible for them to be engaged so that all of us are excellent? And that's my basic operating principle with welcoming jazz into sacred places. We want to animate the music. We want people to know that when they sing immortal and invisible in 4/4 time, they're never going to want to go back to 3/4. Can you imagine this?
Or how about this? You know, so something's happening. So something's happening, and it's given to the room to empower the room, not to exclude, and not to have this false hierarchy
divide between the so-called secular and the so-called sacred. Want to talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah. Psalm 24, verse 1. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Any questions?
There you go. That's all you need to say.
Genesis 28. You know, Jacob's running away from his brother, who's coming after him with a blunt object, puts his head in a stone pillow, wakes up after seeing a dream of angels, and says, God is in this place, and I had no clue. We're going to keep that up. Psalm 39, should I go on? So, you know, if this is God's plan, God's source, then it's presumptuous for us to decide where God fits and what we're doesn't. Now, we are Torah people as Christians, so we are given the Word, and there is guidance given to us. But even that, it's almost kind of like discipline given to children. Don't step over that line. And guess what? Don't step in the mud. What's the first thing they do? Which is Paul says, you know, it kills me. The law kills me. Revelation. Well, not five weeks.
Well, we probably have to leave some room for other people to talk. So I have other questions that I've even written down and more things. But before we go, have some jazz-themed snacks. Questions, comments, and I'll maybe repeat them just for the sake of the folks at home listening on Facebook. Anybody want to ask anything he said, or anything about his book, or anything about music, or art, or creativity, or jazz, or music, or race? Or maybe you're in the wrong place and you thought this was something else. Any questions? Please, Debbie.
You know, so much of your language is spirit. It's Holy Spirit. So that's got to be key, the empowerment and the.
Repeat
I
that.
mean, I'm in my spirit period, so I can't escape it. It's just everywhere.
Yeah, she says the Spirit is so much of the language that I use, and she uses, everything's in the presence, it's power, the Spirit. So is that a statement, or does someone want to know?
What's that?
Was that just a general statement, or?
No, you're aware? I know you have to be aware of that. But it's because the spirit's not always nice.
Right. The Spirit is not always nice. Sometimes the Spirit is fierce,
Oh,
or possessive, or shy.
kick ass.
A kick in the butt.
Yeah, very much so. Which, at least in my life, usually happens after I've done something. Not when I'm doing it. So, what do you think?
Go that way.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, to welcome the divine, to welcome God's presence into our lives means that we are under instruction and will stay that way. I mean, the older I get, I know this is heresy, but I still think that some days of the week, that some of the people I've met, that purgatory might be a good idea. Because we're not finished.
Just for a little
people that write, people that do poetry, people that do woodwork, people that are songwriters, people that are dancers. And so you've done a little thinking about the creative process.
Your dancers, man.
But the creative process as a spiritual discipline almost.
Yeah.
So as exercising spirit, letting loose and being who God wants you to be, and using that gift to steward it well. But you do it also in community. Jazz is often, maybe not Bill Evans even, but it's often playing off each other. Talk about how the collaboration thing works. Is that a metaphor for Christian growth?
No, I mean, it's cool, you know, and it really, all human community begins with listening to one another. Listening to one another. That was a great example of the power of Babel. They're all speaking different languages and couldn't understand one another. It's a great gift, the gift of Pentecost. It's suddenly we're given the ability to understand and listen to one another. And that's what happens on the bandstand with jazz musicians. I'll play something, and Tony the bass player will play it with a take up fifth, and then the drummer will give you something else kind of reactive, because he's constantly reacting to us or losing us or something. And there's this energy surging back and forth. It's like this entity. It's like, well, it's like Ruben's icon of the Trinity. They're all around the table throwing bricks at one another. And this is the Holy Trinity. And there's energy and love, and it's holding them together around a common table. And then the tune's over. And they hit the restroom, they come back with another tune. So I mean,
Is this sort of a theology of play? I mean, there's a playfulness to this too, right? What's the aesthetics or the philosophy of play? It's sort of the opposite of working on something.
You have the ability to, that's how you assumption. You tell yourself you don't. Because as soon as we're 10 years old, we're told the sky is not green and the ducks are not orange and the right color. So we have to color within the lines. But before that, there's a certain kind of childlike joy and delight. And so what happens with a lot of jazz musicians, which is why they can't manage their money very well, is that they're like little children, at least on the dance. And it's the most amazing, astonishing thing, because it's one of the few disciplines, artistic disciplines, where the verbs play and work are interchanged. Going out to play, we're going to work at the same thing. And so why not just embrace that and say, you know, we can have a good time here. Lose all track of time. Let's welcome what happens, and if it doesn't work, well, we have another time, maybe. And that's okay. It's the efficiency of what it is. And again, not dead. Editing is another process. Belongs on the desk.
Hey, suppose somebody does want to say, okay, you convinced me, I need to know this discipline a bit better. Are there a couple of key jazz albums? You tell a lot of great stories in the book. And we've heard of Louis Armstrong, and maybe we've heard Coltrane. Do you have like a couple, like the top 3 jazz albums of all time, or that, other than your own, of course? He's got several, by the way. I'll do my salesman pitch here. That's my spiritual gift. Songs without words. He went on a sabbatical, meditated on the songs, and they did a bunch of instrumental pieces inspired by that song. And some are fast, some are slow, some are lament, some are joyful. So this is a great little double, is it double? It's single album. So the double album, it's just a lot here. Songs Without Words, Bill Carter and President Rock. Here is one called Interior Window. Think about that phrase. He has the Dancing Calvinist one. And then here's one called Jazz for the Earth, which is almost sort of a suite done out west, I think, in Canada. In Calgary, and it's an elegy for the earth. So he's got these albums back there, instrumental. But what are some key jazz albums that we should know other than your own?
Well, the one best album is Miles Davis's Kind of Blue. That's all around sometimes. Just astonished. I think it's the first tape. I
belongs to God. It does not come to us. Isn't that part of what we've been saying tonight? There's spirit here. That in this creative process, both in your writing, music, and in your writing, well, certainly performing. And I think even in listening, there's something going on. He continues, this is the paradox, the tarnished beauty of fragile strength. The power of the Creator found in a beat-up apostle, found in an infant in swaddling clothes, the complete justice of God condemned by sinful politicians, the very gift of life condemned by the powers of death. God's treasures often come in a fragile package. I love that paragraph. And of course, the next line is, throughout the history of jazz, you've got to this book. We had on sale down there. Don't autograph them, don't autograph them. You don't autograph them for friends. And it's great Christmas presents. So I know. And here, that's it. I was going to do a quiz. So Bill knows all of these already because we talked about it. I'll just let you guys know. Genevieve Blues was written by Ma Rainey, 1924. We got Tangerine, Johnny Mercer, 1921. Dave Brubeck, everybody, Dave Brubeck recorded it, as did everybody else. Peel Me Great, you ever heard that by Dave Richford, 1962. Diana called it that. Cantaloupe Island, do that.
You know that?
Herbie Hancock, you play it. How about Herbie Hancock's Watermelon Man? T for two. That's Florida. Keep playing. Coltrane, Oscar Peterson, Ella Fitzgerald, Pat Basie did it, Ben Goldman did it, and Gene Krupa. Water by Reverend Furr, 2011. Black Coffee, Sonny Burke, and Paul Francis, recorded again by Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Peggy Lee. And we got it all that. So we got to get short and break. Hey, that's almost, it's written when I was little. Was a nice slave. And the great, David Beck did it. But then the great Charles Mingus did a mocking version of it. Talk about class and stuff. So we got short and break. We eat it ironically. Cheesecake by David Armstrong. Salt Peanuts by Dizzy Gillespie. Potato chips, Slim Dillard.